read the speaker's bio. Yes, so we are glad to have Dr. Gladys Akunna, who is an independent researcher. And Dr. Gladys Akunna is an award-winning researcher, scholar, and author with a pioneering spirit. Innovative and enlightening research in her Africanized dance movement therapy, DMT model, creatively and authentically blends relevant Western thoughts and scientific African indigenous knowledge about dance, movement, and language symbols, psychology, healthcare, and the Ahumandu, loosely translated in English as the human body, which she phenomenologically and practically applies from the African Igbo language as the seen or visible beauty of life. Dr. Akunna is focused on equity, power relations, integrations, healing, and the healthcare, or the care of the visible beauty of the Africanized Black body, plagued by trauma from troubling historical realities. Africanized DMT bridges vital gaps in global psychotherapy knowledge and practice from an enhanced, fascinatingly refreshing and different perspective. Dr. Gladys Akunna is presently an independent researcher in Philadelphia. She served as a visiting scholar at Drexel University and a 2025 Artists in Residence at the University of Pennsylvania. She was awarded with an International Fellowship of the American Association of University Women in 2020. About her philosophy, the African Igbo philosophy of education is grounded on the visual and the performative, summed up in the saying Anagi ano ufu ebe okiri mau, meaning that the masquerade is not watched from one spot, negating the dangers of a single perspective on knowledge, which should be meaningful, relatable, and broadly harnessed from the vantage angles for personal utility. As an artist in residence at the University of Pennsylvania in 2025, she explored the immeasurable contributions of African and African American historical icons to Africanized DMT. They symbolize visible bodies of evidence for appreciating the community's mental health and African-focused psychotherapy. The cultural and educational influences from her formative years and her roots in the United States enabled her to bridge cultural history, ancient wisdom, and enduring principles, language, and body care practices through Africanized DMT. In this research, she analyzes the concept of oppression and power in relation to the visible Africanized body and empowerment within Africanized DMT. Thank you so much, Dr. Gladys Akunna. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much for this beautiful introduction and biography. I didn't know you would take to be this elaborate. So it's like saying everything already, right? But I want to thank again the organizers of this program, especially Professor Simfrey McConney, for instituting a project, a platform like this, intellectual platform to forge the dismantling of hegemonic um, uh, boundaries in education. I I don't know if I have to go with the slides today, and you know, it can be made available, but I would just like to hold this conversation because we are talking about experiential issues, and Africanized dance movement therapy is all about uh, mindfulness, all about control, all about motivation and optimism, uh, incorporating the process of growth. The idea that uh, an individual as unware. And I emphasize that in Africanized dance movement therapy, a concept that is a little bit silent in global dance movement therapy practice. The individual is mentioned, but not in that not in that concrete sense. That when you talk about the individual, you talk about the individual as the possessor of the self, and that's very important, especially when we talk about the discipline of psychology and the study of the unconscious and what role the individual has to play in controlling bodily functions. So the individual is not just left to the whims and caprices of external influences. The individual has to understand that he or she is an active participant. And we cannot emphasize that, because that is the bedrock of psychotherapy in the African culture, which is an everyday thing. Everybody is involved in psychotherapy on a daily basis. Everybody is involved in self-body care on a daily basis. You don't have to walk in. You are expected. And that is the idea of education, enlightenment, insight into the working of your body, of your body, your mind, and everything that you are in the process of becoming. So we have a lot of indigenous structures from where I derive inspiration. And that's why I know the object, the individual, as a focal point of health and disease conditions. The Igbo, at the heart of Igbo philosophy, African Igbo philosophy, is issues about education and healthcare. Basically, healthcare is known as ilekata aho, caring for the body. That's just the simple definition of healthcare. Ilekata aho, caring for the body. And it doesn't matter what kind of body it is, whether young or old, white or black, caring for the body. That's just what it is. Ilekata aho. Aho is that visible object, that's the physical person, so to speak. The body, when I appear before you as an African, I have the knowledge and I'm asking you silently, do you see me? Do you see me? And that's the problem with English language, because I needed to understand psychotherapy, my body care from my language. And I wasn't getting that, the full meaning, the full essence of the whole thing from the English language. And so, for instance, aho is body, right? But what it actually means is ahom, do you see me? So if you see me, how would you treat me? If you actually do see me for who I am, how would you treat me? And if I see you for who you are, ahoge, I'm seeing you, and I'm ahoge, that means I'm seeing you, and if I see you, how would I treat you? So could it be because we do not see one another as we are, could that be the reason why there's so much injustice and oppression? Which is the word for oppression is called mebu, crafts that cut down. That's what oppression means. Because, I'm oppressed. But what does that really mean? Crafts, activities that diminishes, that cuts down the human, and we'll come to that, the body. Activities that cut down the body, that's oppression. And the individual has the power within them from the African concept, performative symbolic concept of psychotherapy, has that inherent power within them to always resist any craft or any kind of external influence that wants to diminish them. And it's not surprising today because I'm happy to be holding this meeting, this conversation, and on the Black History Month. And we know exactly what transpired here in this nation and how my ancestors were transported from Africa, uprooted, dislocated, everything about them disrupted. And they came to this country, and yet they were able to forge a community. How did that happen? Do we ever sit down to think about that? That for close to 400 years, there were crafts designed, external forces acting against their bodies as men, as women, as children, and yet they were able to stand because they were able to derive that inner power, inner strength to overcome the odds. So we know in African culture, and I know that an unbroken spirit can mend even a battered body. An unbroken spirit can mend a battered body. So, and that's the experience here. That's the experience that I see in this community, living here, understanding the culture here. That's why like the lecture I delivered, I looked at these icons because I'm looking at concrete evidence to interpret the semantic memory of the people in language, right? So I'm looking at the picture of Frederick Douglass, for instance, and all throughout, there's no smile on his face in all the pictures. So his face to me represents the idea of trauma. He's talked about trauma so much in his community. Trauma so much. Nsobu means any factor, any variable that cuts down, that diminishes. Any variable, that's the meaning of trauma. Any variable. So it's not, we don't have it in that sense that Western psychotherapy or formulated by Freud has it, that it has to do with trauma that occurred in childhood experience that gets manifested in later life of the individual. Trauma can occur at any time in the African Igbo worldview. It can occur. It's whatever variable that acts upon the body to diminish the body. And oppression and power, oppression, mebu and nsobu work together. Remember, the common denominator is bu, which is killing, which is mortifying. Mebu is the crafts. Like when the laws of segregation, Jim Crow, and everything came about, there were crafted activities to diminish the life of a community, the life force of a community. Life force in the sense, that power, that inner power, that's that life force, to diminish it. But coming from, and that's what I like to believe, and that's how I see it, coming from a background that already has instituted from time immemorial that you are responsible for your own health care. I mean, body care. You have to make yourself healthy before you can help the other person to realize themselves. You have to live that healthy life. So that was, for me, that's what I see when I look. And for me, it's experiential. It's my own ideas about psychotherapy, right? So how was this community able to survive? Because they knew the power that the mind, the influence of the mind over the body. So that is why in the Igbo culture, the individual has to harness and operate an ever-increasing consciousness and bodily integration, has to learn how to coordinate that. So mindfulness, that's what it is. Mindfulness at all times, being present. And being present is not just like you're not thinking about the future. You're just here. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about what happened in the past. No, being present means living in the consciousness of yesterday and the future. And that's why the Igbo say, Tabubo, today is eternity. The language structure is so dense. It just takes a single phrase and you are able to understand so much from it, just a single phrase. Tabubo, today is eternity. This present time is eternity. And that's why the Igbo also have these names, Azuka, Iruka. Azuka, the back is mighty and powerful. The front is powerful. So, and you are right in between, managing both the back and the front. And that's what psychotherapy is all about. You are able to take control, even in the present, of what happened yesterday and what will happen in the future. That's increasing mindfulness and that control. And you are expected to do it. That's why they are able to fear. Every time an ugly situation or an ugly thought comes to the head, you will see that active, action, active, rejection of not just like rational emotive therapy, where you say, okay, you have to think. No, you speak it out and you act it out. Right? You fling your hands over your head like you're pushing out every evil thought, every negative thought from your head, fling it away, far away from the body, from the sphere of the body, far away. Some go ahead to even shrug their shoulders like anatomical. I don't even want it reflected on my body, like because trauma penetrates even the musculoskeletal features of the body. Right? So the shrugging and even the physiological working of the body, functioning of the body, spitting it out. So you see to fear. And of course, because of our colonization process that, to fear has been bastardized. It means to throw it away again. Throw it away again. So it's a continuous process of mindfulness and control. So whenever a thought comes, you just throw it away. And all these techniques are incorporated in Africanized dance movement therapy. So you throw it away and you continuously do that because it's a continuous process. That's why I said it's ever increasing mindfulness, awareness, mentalization, vision, focus, direction. It's very, very important to have that. Nobody gives it to you. You have it by yourself. You have to develop it by yourself. The therapist can only help you. I mean, because now we talk about you go to the therapist, but before you apart from the communal festivals which people, transitional festivals and communal, rites, age graded, and that people tend to think as, but that was a way to bring the people together, in an informal learning space, to like an informal learning space to help them integrate what individually they have been learning, what individually they have been exposed to before that particular event, or maybe a puberty rite of something or anything, right? So that is like, okay, come experience it communally, right? So it's an individual thing, and the body is visible, the body is never hidden. And I say it, and I've used concretized examples like I said, drawing inspiration from this community, the African American community, when I talk about the unsmiling face of Frederick Douglass, the voice of Martin Luther King, the athletic prowess of Simone Biles, like rejecting everything that has to do with limitation, like, she represents that. She represents that freedom, freedom to live, to be who you really want to be, aspire to be. That's becoming, right? So, and the undying cell of Henrietta Lacks, they all inspire me. They all inspire me. They all inspire. Why would a cell refuse to die? Even why would a cell refuse to die? Why would it be from a Black woman? And because we have this backlog of knowledge that the world does not, the global community does not know. And it's orally transmitted. So we don't take it serious. And so when the advocacy is made for health ideas, generating health ideas, Africa is not mentioned. Oh, they are ritual. Everything is about the realm of rituals, the realm of, esoteric and magic and superstition and all that. But I grew up knowing that there are ritualized dances, and there are dances for pure psychological reasons. There are dances for masquerades, which represent a different realm of existence, the unknown. What Carl Jung came up with to talk about the unconscious, right? So we represent those that the unconscious with such kind of imagery, symbol, the unknown. So the masquerade shrouded with all the multi-layer costumes, everything is, and that's why that Igbo philosophy of Anahano Febi, you don't stay on one spot and watch the masquerade. It's the philosophy. For me, you gather perspectives from this angle, from that angle. There is the colors, there is the movement, there is the sound, there is the costumes, the textures, everything all, mixed together. And you have to pick them up one by one to study them. That's what the statement means. You don't stay on one spot and watch the masquerade. You have to garner, knowledge. For instance, this platform is allowed, fostered by Penn State University. Penn State as a pinnacle of learning, represents and hosting this kind of program to garner ideas, to build more healthy, progressive, enlightened communities where we can understand the essence of space sharing, not encroaching on somebody else's space, you flourishing in your own space, have all the resources of nature, within you, and to help to design your destiny, formulate your destiny, right? So the university is called Mahadum. Mahadum, know it all. Know it all. So we wonder what kind of knowledge comes out from our university system today, our university structure as a pinnacle of learning. What kind of knowledge comes out, are generated, and we have to be very careful about that, because we know we cannot know it all. That's the essence of continuous mindfulness, searching, insight, research, So if the university is Mahadum, know it all, know everything, and the professor is Okamuta, the one who knows more than me, right? That's the meaning. And the Yoruba will say Ojogbon, full of wisdom. That's what a professor is, full of wisdom, right? So what kind of knowledge do we generate? Because I know that any knowledge generated, and that's why at the heart of Igbo philosophy are issues of education, enlightenment, and healthcare, care for the body, because it's the individuals that make up the community. So the individual has the resources The Igbo, for instance, would pray because we're entrepreneurial, and that's about creative essence of the individual. We're entrepreneurial in nature, and the Igbo would pray, like a mother would pray for the child. And it's a common knowledge. You will trade with the blind. You will trade with the blind on all the market days, and all the market days are for trading. There's no day that you just sit. Every time is you have to exercise creativity. That's what it means. You will trade with the blind. It is not derogatory. It's not like, but trading with blind is you will work with people who are not knowledgeable, right? So who wants not to be knowledgeable? So if we keep hearing it and a mother says you will trade with the blind, who wants to be the blind? Everybody wants to aspire not to be the blind, wants to aspire to. So it's a way to make everybody sit up and wake up, so you don't become the blind, because you'll be left out in the affairs of life, in the marketplace of life. You'll be left out if you happen to be the blind. So you don't want to be the blind, right? So, and always they ask, Uche where? Let your mind be there. Anything you are doing, let your mind be there. Somebody asks, is your mind there? That's being present, being focused, having direction. And so the body as a focal point of health, which is very visible. The Igbo would wish for the good head, always. Ijeoma, we call it Ijeoma. So all the embodied resources you need to succeed is within you. Ijeoma, the good head. So you have to, that's cognition, reasoning. You have to strive to have a good head. You have to strive to have a good face, law of attraction. You have to be able to attract things to yourself. You don't want to be depressed and, huddle in your corner, and, people cannot reach to you and you cannot reach to other people. So you wish for the good face, Ijeoma. Then you wish to be able to speak well, Ezioku. Speak the truth always. Speak the truth, Ezioku. You want to be able to keep your eyes focused. The eyes, they tell you, Anya, that's all about the face. Anya Ruala, bring down your eyes. Let it not hang in the air. Be detailed. Be observant. Be watchful. They want to tell you, they say, Ntibundo, listening is very, very important. You have to listen. You have to learn to listen. Ntibundo, listening is life. And then they go ahead to tell you, Obioma, you have to have a good heart. And this is not just about Obi, because you have a good head, you have a good heart. The heart is, of course, is a very vital organ in the body. So physiologically, the heart pumps the blood and everything. So if your heart is not good, so you learn how to eat right. That's why you say food is medicine. You learn how to eat right so that you don't even have a bad heart, like developing all manner of ailments from the heart not doing its work well. So that's physiological, even though it's symbolic. Now you have to have a format to good stomach. And those are names. We have Obioma, Ijeoma, Ijeoma. We have them as names, and they are very meaningful. So you have to have a good stomach, and that's talking about the center of emotions. So when somebody is like me, they say, oh, this person is dry inside. This person has a dry stomach, right? So you have to know how to control your emotions. That's the good stomach. You have to work for it to control your emotions, hold your emotions in control. Then, of course, you have to have Uloma, the body anatomical system, musculoskeletal structure has to work perfectly. So you talk about exercise, talk about the dances, you talk about, anything, movements, to attain a good body, a strong body for longevity and well-being. Then you also have to have Ijeoma, of course, that's my name, safe journey, right? You have to travel safely. Be careful what you do, right? You have to go safely. You have to be sure where to go and where not to go, And with that also comes Uzoma, good pathways. Uzoma, where you walk, make sure there are no hidden dangers. Make sure you know what you're doing. So you have to go, to those places where you are supposed to go with decision making. Has to do with decision making. And with all of this comes Agwoma, good personality, and of course Ndoma, the good life. So you see the body embodied resources for becoming, for becoming. So it's there. So in Africanized dance therapy, which is all about movement and voice and making use of these resources, these are all introduced. These are things that are very scientifically grounded too. It's not just as if they're just symbolic. They are very scientifically grounded. So the individual understands himself or herself, from the mental or cognitive perspective, from the anatomical perspective, from the physiological perspective, from the sociological perspective, and all the way around. It's a body resources. So we are able to bring that. Well, but I know that in dance therapy structure, they're embodied, but not, they're embodied works, embodied resources, but not in this sense. I mean, I can relate to this. I can relate to this because this is about me. This is about me. The individual is the sole agency of in his or her healthcare. So we talked about, and so we talked about that. So again, I was a little bit I was a little bit when I wanted to organize my first clinical DMT trial in Nigeria, because I know that I needed to fit into that. I needed to harness all of this to help me, you know, uh, you know, uh, work with people under very. I mean, in Nigeria is a different cultural environment. I mean, nobody, mental health crisis above the roof. More than 40 million Nigerians have that, right? And it's a lot of issues. People don't trust the orthodox medical care. Everybody's still thinking about, the spiritual ways to go about mental health and things like that. So, but I needed to bring all these things in, which are very scientific and culturally grounded, to help me negotiate that process of therapy with clients that have depression and schizophrenia. So this cultural background, this knowledge helped me to build a successful, to carry out a successful research. And that's what I'm transmitting. That's what I'm using now, these resources I'm using to formulate the Africanized dance therapy. Again, I say human being because for a long time, I had that problem. I had issues with the human being. I mean, how, the animal thing, the Homo sapien, the primate thing, and everything. But that doesn't exist in my culture. It doesn't exist in my culture. The word for human being is madu, madu, just like the masculine is more beauty of death and then beauty of life. The opposite is madu, madu. That's the living person, the beauty of life. That's what I am. So to say that I had, the primate thing and everything is not part of the African culture, the African, and even the Yoruba culture where I grew up. The word for the human being is Eniyan, the chosen one. So it's not something you can just describe, because it's a physical, psychological, spiritual, social entity you're talking about. So you can't just say, oh, simplistically, that this is what and what, right? So for the Yoruba, it is Eniyan, the chosen one. And for the Igbo, it is Mmandu, the beauty of life. There is nothing that relates to an animal or maybe a primate or anything in my worldview, right? So, and if you are working with Mando, the beauty of life, you know that sometimes you can have elements of ugliness, tainted, and things like that. That's what you try to do away with in therapy. Anything that will taint that beauty, anything that will make it not realize its full potential of beauty, that's what you try to, that's what we work to remove in therapy. And that's why everybody, psychotherapy is an everyday thing. So we don't have that worldview of primates or anything that we learn about in medical science and in sociology and anthropology and other things. It's not an African thing. And, it helps me better to understand that I'm dealing with, when I have this image that, okay, this person has depression, or something is tainting this beauty. It's the face. The face is not. The face is gloomy. Something has to be done to this face. right? The beauty has to come out, right? And that's where I encourage and help. And then the individual, the individual himself has to work on himself, has to work on herself using these resources. It's just to encourage, to remind. And most of these things are not talked about because of the colonization process that have kind of eroded all these things from our knowledge system. And we are exposed to that. So the animal thing is not part of us. And I think we should begin to talk about that because it's in science, it's in medical science. Oh, we are higher animals. An animal is bushmeat. Animal here, that's what it means in Igbo language. It's bushmeat, just that. Bushmeat. It's not mad. It's not Eniyan, as Yorubas, the beloved. It's bushmeat. The Yoruba call it enoko. Bushmeat is the same word, even in Yoruba culture. And I'm sure even in Hausa and some other cultures, because out of the 300 and something ethnic communities in Nigeria, I can only speak two. It's a very complex country. And the Yoruba call it Eniyan, the beloved, and they will call it mother. And both cultures have the same name for the animal, bushmeat in English, animal for the bush, meat from the bush. So how can I now begin to look at my client as an animal, bushmeat? It's very, very, very derogatory. It's very, very derogatory coming from my own background, because for you to call somebody an animal, that means you're abusing the person. You are reducing the person. And we don't have that worldview. So I emphasize Mado in Africanized dance movement therapy because I think it's important. I emphasize the individual as the possessor of the self because I think it's important. Also, I emphasize the concept of detachment because I think this is also very, very important. And it's in every African, every phase of life, you see that detachment. You know, so you look at all these embodied resources that you have to harness it yourself to be able to use that. Then I look at the detachment theory because we have been used to the attachment theory. And I think we should begin to emphasize again the detachment theory because the detachment theory is very, very real. I grew up exposed to Western narratives because as a child, I came across a particular book, Fairy Tales of Long Ago. And I saw a lot of tales, Rapunzel, Jack and the Beanstalk, East of the Sun and West of the Moon, The Black Bull of Norway, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, and all of those stories. There's nothing like story in African Igbo language. It's enlightening conversations, but let's use the word here. So in these tales, and I see, even though it was enthralling and fascinating, like the fairy godmother coming, like the Prince Charming coming to wake up Beauty from that eternal sleep, so to speak, and so many other things. We don't have such kind of narratives in African Igbo culture. What we have is an individual sorting out his problem by himself, alone. You know, what I mean is not just alone, but having that awareness, oh, I have to do this for myself, right? That's what we have. The attachment theory is foreign from what I have discovered, from the language structure, from the art practices, art making practices. For instance, when a child when a woman is pregnant, in the Yoruba culture, you would always hear the prayer or invocation, or maybe invocation, right? Let's hear the voice of the mother and the cry of the child. So both child and mother share in the experience of pregnancy and maternity, but in different dynamics and different formats. And the African Yoruba understands that the child is different from the mother. So let's hear the cry of the child and the voice of the mother. So they are both separate entities. And even though they coexist together, but their individuality is not in question. And even from that early stage, the child is recognized as a full individual, who possesses himself or herself from the very beginning. From the very beginning. So we have the Ubuntu philosophy, and I quite appreciate that much because Africa is communal, but that communality has been so overflowed that it makes it look like the other viable aspect, which is detachment, has been relegated. And it's there in everyday life. We'll say that example in everyday life. So the detachment theory is has made such a huge impact in psychology and psychotherapy. Maybe that is why, because it's the way, and I said from the narrative where beauty has to be woken up by a prince, and where yes, Cinderella has to be held by a godmother, and all those kind of magical, esoteric things. So it's like the protagonists cannot live by themselves without the influence of the other person. So when you talk about being individualistic and then having this kind of narratives, I can't put the two together. And then you say we are we have the health instinct in Africa, or so to speak, or as Africans and things like that. And that's why we can see a figure like Martin Luther King with the voice as an individual, and we see the whole community backing him up. So movements, like all the movements, all the walks, all the sittings and everything that, the rides and everything. And then you see him talking. So you see the individual, you see the community, and they all come together as one. So you see detachment, you see communalism. So that's the way it is. And if there is anything that explains detachment more for me, even anatomically and in biology, it is the umbilical cord and the cutting of the umbilical cord. The Igbo call the umbilical cord otubere. Otubere, that is oneness terminated. So when the umbilical cord is cut, that's a physical sign. But you know that even in the womb, the child is in the amniotic fluid, separate from the mother, but within the mother, but still enclosed somewhere. But physically now, concretely, when the child comes out, the umbilical cord that kind of links is cut, and the umbilical cord is called otubere. So I call it otubere philosophy. And that is what we also have in our narratives. And that's what we have in our psychotherapy structure from the Igbo perspective. Professor Aweri Feta, clinical psychologist in Nigeria, Aweri Tefe, clinical psychologist in Nigeria, I don't know why I'm mixing it up now, invented the Meseron therapy. As an alternative to rational emotive therapy and others as a clinical psychologist. And Meseron means I reject it. Just simple, and in Yoruba language, I reject it. I reject it. So, and that's the I, and then we reject it. So the quality of the individual makes the community. So these are issues. These are basic foundations, and when we talk about movement is not just about, movement is immeraria. So when I'm working with movement, when we have to use movement, in like Dr. King spoke about dramatization, we're dramatizing for freedom, and it makes a great deal of sense because through that dramatization, through those words and everything, the American government listened to the voice, the demands of the people. They eventually did. They listened. So movement is remaking, remaking. That's what movement means, remake. The biological sense of it, we already know is that, okay, just move. But movement is remaking the body. Everything is related to the body. It's healthcare. Even when we move, it's about the body. So whether politically, like, demanding for things like the boycotts and the walks and things like that. But the body moved. The community moved as a body. So we saw the visible bodies, as a whole block moving, to achieve the goal of freedom. So if everybody has sat down without doing nothing, nothing will have happened. So when you move your body, you remake your body, you remake your universe, you remake your world. So movement means imegareaho. So everything has meaning, dense meanings, whether it has to do with the body, whether it has to do with movement, whether it has to do with, the mind, the alpha here, the alpha that contains it's the center of the sympathetic nervous system, which is the center of emotions. And my people knew it long before psychotherapy was discovered as psychology, science of the mind, and people started talking. Even with that, there was a lot of discussion about duality of the body and the mind for some time. We never had those discussions. We never had those conversations. We've always believed in the unified entity of the body and the mind as a whole that is visible for all, that can be diagnosed, that can be seen and related, with. So these are issues that, and it's quite a lot. I can go on and on, but these are issues that I bring to bear, and they are not my knowledge. They are not. They have been there. There are resources that have been there. I didn't invent them. They have been there. They are cultural resources that have been there, but have not been projected. I mean, they have not been brought to limelight. Like the detachment theory. And if you look at our Moremi, the legend of Ile-Ife, was the wife of King Oromiyan. She stepped out from the comfort zone of her husband and the palace and decided to take up the duty of fighting becoming a spy to help her community. And they call her the clay, which remolded the entire Yoruba race. Just the way Henrietta Lacks is the clay that is remolding people, uniting people with her cell. She's there, they're using her cell in every laboratory, across the globe, medical breakthroughs and scientific breakthroughs. That's her cell, remolding, remaking. So we have to bring all these things into context. Knowledge that is, and that's what we are also guide against, because you have to know what you're talking about. You have to study. That's the idea of deep reflection, being involved, looking at different perspectives. Which one best suits you? Which one best suits your creativity, your lifestyle? Which one best suits your body care? Those are the issues that I try to bring to the open through Africanized dance movement therapy. I understand that they say know yourself is the best philosophy, and it didn't originate from Greece. It didn't originate from anywhere. It's always been there and part of the African culture. Know yourself as the best philosophy, because self-awareness brings that knowledge of knowing yourself. That's why they always say, let your mind be there, because you have to be aware at all times. That instruction, that's a psychological structure. Where you have to be mindful at all times. You have to be mindful at all times. You have to live your life in the full realization that you can always become. There's nothing like, there's no situation that cannot be changed. That's why the Igbo will say, and if you agree to it and you walk towards it, you will achieve it. It's an age-long philosophy. And it has to do with you yourself. And then if you are able to overcome the odds, then you are able to help the other person. You are able to reach out. You have, they say you can't give what you don't have. So you have to know what you have, and you have to be able to use that, to help yourself and then to reach out to the other person. Just like this, the cultural narrative of the orphan child. And like I said, we don't have the story of godmothers and fairies and all that. The orphan child uh, uh, whose stepmother bought the African star fruit and gave to her children and didn't give the boy. And the boy was weeping and crying because it's a fruit. Children love the African, star apple. And this little boy didn't get from, maltreatment. That is maybe like oppression, right? And then this child was able to pick a seed of the udala, the African star apple, pick it from the dirt and planted and cried and wept over that seed, you know, calling. And we know today, I've read it, that even plants hear when you talk to plants, right? So it's scientific now. So even when we hear it in our cultural narrative, like in oral enlightening conversations, we think it's okay. Maybe it's just superstition or anything. But even now, even in medicine, it's even scientifically says plants can hear when you speak to them. So this little boy spoke and kept watering and tending this plant, and it grew and became a mighty udala tree and bore so many fruits, and he was able to give to the community. And they all shared. So from being deprived to now becoming a solution to a particular problem of supplying food for his community. He didn't have to, there was no fairy anywhere to visit him to tell him what to do. He taught by himself to do that. And Olaida Ekwano, who wrote the first slave biography about slavery, happens to be from my hometown, my cultural background, and I like it when I see his smiling face, right? How can he smile? As a little boy, he passed through the middle passage. He passed through, he was uprooted, and yet he could still smile. So, and his name, Ola, that means loud sounding jewel. That's what it means, loud sounding jewel. So, and that's what he is. Like he remembers the artistic background. Always, he carried it with him. So maybe I'm sure that helped him to, because the way he recapitulated and wrote about that, it shows that, and wrote about that so clearly that even sometimes people thought, oh, some people wrote this narrative for him. He must not, he didn't write it by himself. But he carried that background with him. And for me, he represents the symbol of art making in therapy. So if I talk about the Olaudah technique, then we know that we're talking about art making technique, in all of that, in Africanized dance movement therapy, because he kind of embodies that cultural essence, that performative essence of the African life, which he so beautifully and unashamedly wrote about. He said, we Africans are a nation of dancers, poets, musicians. The art making experience was very vivid in his mind. And I know that I sense it, that it must have been part of what kept him through his journey, here. And for me, he represents that symbol. And like his name, loud sounding jewel, that's music to his name. He's a jewel, it's a beautiful thing. So art making is a beautiful thing in therapy. It's not as if it overshadows the body. No, it just helps to enhance the body. The body is always visible. That's why when the body is I don't want to use human because I'm trying to avoid, because I'm pushing that we should, Mado, I'm more comfortable with Mado, right? So when Mado is traumatized by different forces. Remember that trauma and basically maybe are not, come from the environment, like perpetrated against the individual most of the time, most of the time. And again, I don't feel comfortable when they say Africans don't, and I've read that in some psychology books, psychotherapy books, that Africans have no internal locus of control. That is basically everything is blamed on. Yes, because Mebu and Nsobu come from the outside most of the time, because an individual is taught to take care of himself or herself. So any other thing affecting comes from outside. So that may be the reason why they say have external locus of control, always think that everything that happens to them comes from outside, because from the world, maybe there are crafts that oppress the individual. And trauma is anything, any structure, whatever that cuts down the individual. So usually, if I can take care of myself, then I have to battle. So that could be the reason why it is always said that they always blame everything from that side, because trauma and oppression is something that really come from outside. There are external influences impacting the body most of the time. So, but to say that I don't have an internal locus of control, that's also not true, because from like the little boy who took charge of his environment, food, sorting out food prices, and everything. He took that decision, so he had that internal locus of control, and that's what I have in my traditional indigenous narrative. So where did this idea of not having an internal locus of control coming from? It's misinterpretation. It's misrepresentational. It's not authentic, because if we talk about merging detachment with Ubuntu, then we have an all-encompassing system of body care, right? And I was going to say to that, because and also the fact that everything is ritualized is not true. Because like I said, I've known about maternity dances from a little child, when my mother organized maternity dances for women who are just delivered. And we know today that there are things called postpartum depression and all kind of, even Oedipus Rex and all kind of things, all attached to maternity. They were all sorted out in the performative culture of the people. You don't have to have the Oedipus whatever that was advocated and things like that. I'm not against that, but I'm just saying that this is from my cultural experience, that I have experienced and have known. Because when we had this kind of things, when, for instance, we had this kind of knowledge, this people were kind of vibrant. That's why a little boy who traveled, who was uprooted and traveled and came to this place, could still retain so many things in his head and wrote them and documented them. If it wasn't an experiential thing that he experienced himself, he wouldn't have been able to come in here to document them. So yes, we have an internal locus of control. We are not all about that. So even when we talk about individualism, we should talk about individuation. That's the word to use. Understanding yourself, which Carl Jung emphasizing analytical psychology. It's all about being in control of the unconscious and the conscious. So
I'm sorry, Dr. Gladys. I just wanted to remind you about the time. So if you
yes,
could
so
just
I'm
wrap up
almost
so
done.
that.
I have kind of
Okay,
just
thank you.
mentioned everything. Right. I'm sorry
Yeah.
that I did. I was just but it's everything that I have here already in my thoughts and everything expressed in the. So I think if it can be made pop, that will be okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gladys. That was a
Thank
very
you.
informative presentation. Professor Makoni, I now welcome you for an engagement with Dr. Gladys Akunna. Sorry.
Okay, thank you very much for this informative presentation.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Yes, I want to have a discussion with you that touches on a couple of key ideas that kept coming into my mind as you talked.
Okay. Sir.
You talked about how the body is understood in certain African ethnic groups.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, in the sort of ethnic groups that you are most familiar with, do they draw distinctions between the human body and spirituality? Or do they see, let me stop.
Okay, so unknown caller. Please, excuse me. Yes, we in my community, in my African Igbo community, there is the body is one whole. The body is one with the spirit and with the mind. The body is one with the spirit and the mind, because like Onweya is possessor of the self, but you live yourself through your body. So it's all integrated. It's all integrated. You have that Onyekwe Chia. It's Chia again. Is that aspect of the divine. The ultimate energy in the person. So the person is kind of like a part of the ultimate energy. The individual is a part of, so that's the spirituality. So it's a whole entity. So it's psychological, it's physical, it's sociological. I mean, it's spiritual. So there is in the African Igbo culture, there is no demarcation, so to speak. It's part. The spirit is part of the body, and the body is part of the spirit.
Oh, okay. So the spirit and the body are not only intertwined, they are
intertwined.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. From Onyekwe Chiekwe philosophy. Onyekwe, if you agree to it, then your chi agrees to it. The Yorubas, it's a deep spirituality, because the Yoruba look at the chi. Sometimes they say Uri, the foundation of all things. The head, is the beginning of all things. And even in the Igbo culture, Isi too. So the head is spiritual, not just for cognition, right? Not just for cognition. It's the beginning, the fountain of life. Just like the stomach too. So they're all intertwined.
They're all intertwined.
Yes, intertwined, right? So they influence each other, right? And that's why the individual is in control, because you don't leave it to the caprices of emotions or whatever. You have to be in charge of your act. That's the essence of Onyekwe. Ultimately, you are in charge. Ultimately, the individual is in charge. Right.
But yes. But then my next question is, how is this individual understood? If you were to say in Igbo cultures or in other African communities, individuals are understood only in terms of how they relate to other people. So you understand Makoni in terms of his relationship with other people.
Yes.
So you understand him in relationship.
I understand.
Yeah. So
Yes.
if
So,
relationality is important,
Mhm.
how does it fit into this worldview?
So the individual
Ah,
is onwe ya, and that's where I'm grounded. The
okay.
possessor of the self. And
Yeah.
we are all, a community is made up of individuals.
Uh-huh.
But there is the Igbo philosophy of sharing space. It's very important. Uh,
Okay.
yes, space. The struggle here, basically, this struggle is sharing. It's how to
Yes.
share space. In any way, in any relationship, it's how do you stay in your space? How? So even in advancement therapy, you say you have to establish your boundaries. You have to do this. You have to do that. Now
Yeah.
there is this statement. Ewe belu, ugo
Mm-hmm.
belu. Nke si ibe ya ebe na nku ya gbajie n'ike. The
Mm-hmm.
hawk will perch, and the eagle will perch. The one that says the other should not perch, let its wing break suddenly. That's that's about empathy, about understanding. So that statement alone, that
Mm-hmm.
phrase, "Ebe belu ugubelu, ebe belu
Uh-huh.
ugubelu, nke si be ya bena, nke ya gbajie n'ike." That the eagle and the hawk are birds of prey. Yes, they have certain similarities, right? But they are different in shape, in size, and in so many perspectives. But the eagle has its space. The the hawk also has its space, and both must patch, both must remain in the wider universe. Still, both must be free to perch in their own space and derive all the benefits from perching, like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
resting their feet, their claws, exercising their claws as they grasp, and so many other things. They have to, each has to respect the other space. It's a common rule. It's a common moral compass
Mm-hmm.
that, and there's a cause, there's a collective cause, the whole of the universe, to break the wings that make it impossible for such a bird to fly anymore.
Yes.
That's a curse. So if you think you can reach the surface of the sun, right, and you want to oppress the 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 hawk, which is smaller in size and everything, talking about the eagle, right? Then you should think twice, because if you oppress and prevent the hawk from perching, your wings are going to be broken off suddenly, not just broke off. So that's the whole force of the universe is against, and that's oppression. Because passion
Okay.
is yes, is against the whole force. It's a moral law that no, you have to be that. And then let's remember that it starts from calling the hawk. It didn't start from the eagle. It says the hawk will perch and the eagle will perch. So the one that appears like smaller, like not as big, not as strong, and so on, was mentioned first. So the idea that care should be extended to the vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
by the powerful, and everybody is powerful. Who does not have power, right? But
Yeah.
yes, that's the idea. That's what the Igbo philosophy teaches too, that everybody has power. Ikenga, my strength is here. Everybody has power, strong body, right? So the hawk will perch and the eagle will perch, but whichever, whether the eagle or the hawk, disallows, and whichever disallows the other from perching, let their wings break suddenly. So the whole universe frowns at oppression. The whole universe Igbo universe worldview frowns at oppression. And everybody, the space here must be shared. It's very important, because the struggle
Uh-huh.
is to share the space, whether as friends. How do you don't have to encroach on my space, whether it's intellectual space, whether it's even couples who are married, you know how to share your space so as to avoid problems. Friends, you have to share your space so as to avoid problems. So when you remember, when this Beru philosophy is ingrained in you, then you know how to relate to the other person, your neighbor, so to speak. And by the way, a neighbor in the Igbo worldview is called Akpatobi, the one that touches my heart. So yes, that's the meaning of neighbor. It's not like, oh, my neighbor lives next door. Anything like that. No, that's not the case. Oh, okay, that's my neighbor, but she lives on my street. No, your neighbor is onye akpatobi, onye the one that touches your heart. So if you really live, if somebody touches your heart, you are not going to do things that will hurt the person. That's what it means. So your neighbor can be anyone. But it just, I'm a Christian, so it reminds me of the parable of Jesus and the Good Samaritan, right? When the one who should know, the priest who should know, turned away, the Levite who should know turned away, but the one who was not related at all turned to look and offer help. So from nowhere, right? So your neighbor is the one that touches your heart. That's the Igbo meaning of neighbor, is the one that touches my heart.
Good.
Yes.
Let me
and
ask
the
you
Igbo meaning of love is Afronginaya, I see you in my eyes. So everything is about the body. Healthcare is all about the body. Anytime you want to think about healthcare, you think about the body. Every instruction. So that's why I said the Igbo worldview is about education and caring for the body. So, like in Igbo language, the hospital is house of drugs. That's what it means. House of drugs. It doesn't mean, but for the Yoruba, it is Ilewuson, house of healing. Because I grew up in Yoruba culture. Ilewuson, house of healing. But in the Igbo culture, it is house of drugs, house of medications. It has nothing to do with healthcare, so to speak. So, but that's the way it is interpreted. House of drugs, house of medications, or not healing home. Not like the Yoruba has it as house of healing, but the Igbo culture, it is house of drugs. So, which means that care for the body is in an extended sense. Care for the body in the social domains, care for the body in the economic domains, care for the body in the political domains, care for the body. So healthcare is ilekata aho, caring for the body. That's just what it means.
What it is.
Caring for the body. Right.
Let me ask you the last question, and then I'll hand over to Mercy. When you were talking, you intellectually tantalized my thinking, because you seem to have been making the following three-way distinctions. You were talking at one time about individuals. Then you talked about individuation, or that's what I thought you said.
Individuation.
And then you talked about individuality. And possibly I misheard this. So what was going through my mind was, how are these concepts related to each other within the Igbo universe, or within the Igbo way of thinking?
Yes. So the individual, like I said, is onweya, possessor of the self. I'm in control of myself. Right. So, but individuation is a process of discovery. That's what I talked about, that ever increasing mindfulness and control. Through insight, through education. And education is imu akwụkwọ, imu, like studying leaves, studying. And when we look at the plant world, we see the various types of plants and leaves. For you to now begin to study, that's a very rigorous process. So education is ịmụ akwụkwọ, is ịma akwụkwọ, being knowledgeable. Ịmụ akwụkwọ, studying is ịmụ akwụkwọ, like studying, right? studying leaves. Like then when you study leaves, you become knowledgeable. In Marako, you will understand the leaves from the plant kingdom. So I think it's because we are visual people in Africa. So everything that we do is interpreted within the realm of the visual and things that we can see, things that we can relate to. So when we have the growth model in Africanized advancement therapy as Ito, we remember the plant imagery of breaking from the mounds, and reaching out for, root extending downwards, being grounded, and then, the plant shooting up, to the source of the sun, for photosynthesis and everything. So, but you have to break from the mound first. So that's plant imagery is born in mind when you're thinking about growth. So individuation is that process of becoming. Like I said, today is eternity. You still have the future with you, but how do you manage the future? So it's that. And then individuality is doing your own thing when you should do your own thing, right? I don't know if I answered that.
Good. Thank you very much. Let me hand over to Mercy, because I think there are other people who would like to engage in a conversation with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Makoni and Dr. Akunna, for an engaging and more enlightening discussion. So I'm going to take like 1 or 2 questions, and because of the time. So Vanessa, you have raised your hands. You can go ahead.
I enjoyed your talk immensely. My early studies were in psychology, so I was pulled in with the whole individuation thing and thinking of that within the context of Ubuntu. But I came up with a question that I couldn't quite solve. So you speak of different ways of seeing as an individual and then being seen by the group. And the word that stuck with me was masquerade. And I think about, as humans, as we search for the good face, sometimes we choose different stories because they sit better with us as separate entities outside of our community or our group. And so I was wondering, we talk about attachment and detachment, and I was searching for a word and I couldn't think of it. What do you do when there's too much mixed information? Is there a term for that? As I listened to you, I kept thinking of Frantz Fanon, and a lot of the ideas that you were generating in my mind with your choice of words pulled me completely into the psychotherapy perspective. And I just wondered, what do we do when there's too much mixed in? Because that's how we are as people of color, black or brown. We have all these things that have jumped in from the world outside of our communities and sort of attach themselves to us. So how is there a term for too much mixed in at once?
Okay, so if I understood you well, so you said I mentioned the masquerade as a symbol of the unconscious. It's because of the mystery, and that's why the Igbo call it Mong. I mean, there's nothing bad about that. It's beautiful too, just like life is beautiful. They are both, the same face of the same thing, right? Or opposite sides of the same coin, right? So if there's beauty of life, there's also beauty of death. But that realm is the realm of the unconscious. I mean, symbolically is the realm of the unconscious. I personally, because of the idea of attaching, talking about Africa in the sense of rituals and speculative and spirituality and as against science, I would use the pregnancy state as mine. The pregnancy state, the pregnancy state as the unconscious, because even in my language, the pregnancy state is called afo ime, the deep stomach. The deep stomach. Now, the pregnancy, if apart from now that we have ultrasound and other things, nobody knows what was going on right inside. But even now, we also have the machines for the brain to understand what's going on. So you understand what I'm saying? So nobody had all the ultrasound equipment to look at how the baby is doing and everything. So it was a mystery. It was after a deep stomach. My people regarded it as a deep stomach. So when the baby was forming and everything, it's out of sight, out of plain sight, right? So, and the stomach, again, apart from, so I would like to incorporate both the spiritual and the physical. Now, the stomach is seen physically. The masquerade is shrouded. You don't even see what the masquerade is inside. And so the same way the stomach is protrudes and things are going on inside, right? So
I was thinking more of looking at this strictly from a psychological standpoint, and to the extent that individuation is a process whereby we become better, we become more aware, we become more mindful, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we also tell ourselves certain stories, reinforcing negative things, what have you. So the masquerade for me would have to be less unconscious and more conscious for me to see what limitations I'm placing on myself in terms of individuation, so that I can relate back to the community. Am I explaining that? I mean, am I making it clear?
Yes. So are you saying that for you the masquerade is more of a conscious thing?
Yes, because it
is conscious. It is conscious because you're looking at it. It's a conscious thing but the symbol itself is talking about a realm that is not known, fully known.
Right.
That's the meaning in the language. Beauty of death. Has anybody come back from the land of the dead to really tell you what it looks like, right? So it's like it's visual, yes. Like I said, it's even the pregnancy state is visual because they say anahe uchi afime. You don't cover pregnancy with your hands. That's a common saying. So it's visual. It's everybody says it. But the masquerade is the epitome of creativity. The costume, the drum language, the music. It's so much to learn, right? That's why it's that philosophy of education. But there are hidden elements that you have to unravel. So the masquerade could be for conscious and unconscious, whatever way you want to look at it, because you still have to have hidden beyond those things that you see. You are not seeing the masquerade itself. You only see the outer layers. You are not seeing the masquerade itself. Do you understand what I mean? Somebody wears that. You don't know who that person is. So you can never know who that person is. So that's a mystery on its own. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, thank you.
It's not everything about it that you can know, because there are still aspects of it that you cannot know, because who wears that masquerade? People don't know. Like people who go to the village setting where people go to dress up, you don't know who, when a masquerade comes, you don't know who is donning that particular masquerade. You don't know. And it's a mystery. They don't let you know. You don't know, because even their voice, and there's a way they change the way they speak if they have to speak or anything, like they use glottal tones and things like that, and they don't speak. So you don't know. You can look at the costume. So for me, it's still a little bit of the unknown, which represents that tomorrow, the unseen. That's why I said it has the visual, and but the pregnancy state is a lot more open. In that very soon you will see what is inside. You never know what's inside the masquerade. You never know, even when they go off to take off, you never know who done that masquerade. You never know. So the Afime, while looking at it from the beginning, it's also talking about like the sympathetic nervous system. The center of emotions is in the stomach, and it's very deep. Now again, made physical by pregnancy. The stomach is emphasized. There's that stomach region which houses our emotions, hidden from plain sight, because that's we talk about the central nervous system, and then we talk about the sympathetic nervous system and the diaphragm and everything. And then with the vagus nerve that, medically, joins both system together and loses its outer coating at some points and makes both the conscious and the unconscious fit into one another, right? So, but the pregnancy state incorporates both the idea of the stomach being the seat of our emotions, and emotions are very complex things, very complex energies. So, and how to manage those emotions. So, ordinarily, the stomach is deep. That's why the Igbo would say of somebody who is like having some kind of strange behaviors they cannot understand, or who acts in so many ways, that afoya mirimi, the stomach is deep. The stomach is deep. They say it. This person's stomach is very deep. And when you say a person's stomach is very deep, this person cannot be fathomed. This person cannot be understood. This person acts in ways that we don't even understand, what next will happen with him or her. So that is the idea. So the pregnancy state is, for me, because eventually we're talking about detachment, that the child will have to leave the stomach, the deep stomach, and we now begin to talk about detachment, and that's when the umbilical cord is cut, and people call on the umbilical cord otubero, oneness, terminated. So the child is on its own, not in the attachment or where you say the child sees the mother, sees himself in the face of the mother. No, it's not so in the African Igbo culture. The child now begins to learn. In fact, the child is carried at the back, right? In its own word. That's why mothers carry their children on the back in African culture most of the time. So the child begins to exert itself from the very beginning by its cries. So in my culture, when a child is born, the women will sing and oh, whoever hears the voice of the child, come, let's go and attend to it. So when I hear this saying, it takes a whole community to raise a child. It makes more meaning to me because I see that happen in the maternity dances where they sing, all the women. If you hear the voice of the child, come here, let's attend to the child. And everybody rushes to go to attend to the baby and the mother. Right, so for me, that otubero, for me, and because it's also biological, would serve as a better and concrete as well, would serve as a better representation of detachment. That's why I use it. You cannot see because I'm just formulating it from my cultural experience, cultural background, right?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Akunna. I think we are almost
I don't know if I answered her question. Sorry, please. Did I answer your question? Thank you. Sorry, thank you, Mercy. Thank you.
Yes, yes. So we have a couple of comments and a question. Desmond, I see you raising your hand, but if you can spare me. There's a person who asked a question a long time ago. Her name is Somaya. She said, thank you for this enlightening discussion of DMT. Can you clarify to us how DMT can move from personal to communal and how this plays a role in healing historical wounds and how this eventually leads to communal narratives promoting group empowerment? That's a question for you. I think that should be our last question before we close the recorded session.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Can I answer it now? Can I say it?
Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, every day, in everyday life, we engage in psychotherapy as African Igbo, African Yoruba, African Urobo, African, and I know different tribes from other African countries. We all have different models of psychotherapy, verbal, and of course the dance thing is, the dance movement thing is always there. So moving from, there are relics of of group psychotherapy, even in history, that we can reach out to. Like I just even used the civil rights movement. That was psychotherapy. People see it as a political movement, but I reviewed it as psychotherapy because freedom is a very important aspect of being healthy, of healthcare. It's a very important aspect. You can't manifest good life, Ndoma, if you are bound, if you are held down. It's not possible. So why the civil rights movement is so, that's an example of that communal thing, right? But when you get to the hospital, you can use that, like I say, use all these things in therapy session. And I just talk about, how to use, so I didn't talk about, when you organize therapy sessions, then you know how to employ this embodied resources, in therapy. So you can have, if maybe it's in the hospital, you can have that. You can have the group session. You can also have the individual session, depending on what. But if you're looking at, for examples, like the civil rights movement, I keep emphasizing that because that's what is here in this community, historically documented. Like even those events here impacted on me even in Nigeria as a child, and I didn't even know about it then. Because when I was in elementary school, I was singing songs like Mississippi, Mississippi, and in my little head, I was like wondering, what is this Mississippi all about? Because all I know about, is it a river, or if it's Mississippi River? That's what kept occurring to my mind, because we don't have Mississippi River in Africa. We have the Nile, we have River Niger, we have Benue, we have the Congo, we have, all those rivers. What about Mississippi? Until I, studied and knew the part that the state of Mississippi played in the American Civil War, and the role that prominent figures in that state played in the American Civil War. That's when I understood the songs that I sang as a child, which was therapeutic for us then too. Even as a child, they were making us undergo therapy, and I didn't know, even through the songs, history and therapy, cultural. We sang songs like John Brown, and I didn't understand who John Brown was. And I was wondering, is it missionary or what? Or who is this person? I didn't know John Brown until I came here and I started looking into the American, and I found out who John Brown was. But I sang the song John Brown's Body Lies Are Molding in the Grave as a child back in Nigeria. So talking about, we are all linked. We all exist. The world is a global village. Whether we like it or not, the world is our neighborhood. I mean, people that touch our hearts, right? We should touch one another's heart. We should. That's why I talk about what kind of knowledge do we spread. Now, so we talk about the civil rights. We talk about, that's group psychotherapy for me, because even Dr. King said it's dramatization for freedom, right? So if you say, talking about straightening bent backs, you have to straighten our bent backs. You already know that the back is already bent from servitude and slavery. Now he's talking about straightening it. Is that not about therapy and healthcare? It's not just a political thing. It's about caring. I would say healthcare is about caring for the body. We should never lose focus of that. Caring for the body. That's what healthcare is. Whether in the economic realms, whether in the social political realm, it's caring for the body. Healthcare cuts across all domains of existence. So so that's an example of people, a community traumatized, that were able to speak out and act out and act for themselves, to draw themselves out from from oppressive environment that they operated from. So we saw there's the story of the Aba Women's Riot in Nigeria, in colonial Nigeria, and the women stood up on their own, ordinary women group. One woman just, and they just felt they had enough, and they came out en masse, and the narrative went far and wide, that these women protested and forced the colonial government of the day to change their system. That was healthcare. That wasn't just a political dance. It was, and the women bared their bodies. They made sure all they had was their bodies. All they had, just like in the civil rights movement, all they had was their bodies. Nobody was carrying any gun. Nobody was doing anything. People linked up their hands and we're working together. They boycotted, they walked all the way for 84 days or what? Boycott. They did all that. Everywhere they were displaying their bodies. The Black body has always been visible. It's not hidden. And from my culture, I understand why it's not, because that's what it is. The body is always visible. The body is always visible. It only depends whether we want to acknowledge that or not. And that's why I even talked about it at Alex, that even though she's no longer alive, her cell is still working. So that's a test. I don't know whether it's a spirituality. It goes beyond, it actually also goes beyond talking about the spirituality and psychology and the physical all mashed together. In that her cell alone. So we can talk about all these things. We can always say, the Black body has always spoken out loud in various dimensions. So in group psychotherapy, like the civil rights movement was a group psychotherapy. It was a group psychotherapy. The About Women's riot was a group psychotherapy. It wasn't just a political thing. Healthcare is caring for the body. It wasn't just a political thing, right?
Yes,
I don't know if I.
Yeah, I think you have answered the question, because she is here commenting that, the example that you have given is very helpful, and the connection with the civil rights movement is enlightening. So I think because of time, because it's 10:37 a.m. Eastern time, Professor Makoni, do you have any final words or remark before we stop the recording version?
I just want to say thank you very much for this enlightening presentation on the Igbo culture, worldview, and how it shapes aspects about health. What will be interesting now is, as we move on to the after party, people may have questions and comments that they want to raise. But before we do that, let's say thank you very much. Let's thank our speaker.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you, Professor Bakun. Thank you so much for this platform.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.